That's Giraffe Neck, Mark. You all know who that is. This is Wardy. If you're new to the channel, hi, how are you? I talk about the Mets for a living, and that's the number one problem that we have today. The Metropolitans just dropped their first two games of a three-game set against the LA Dodgers, and normally that wouldn't seem like a big deal, especially in the way, the first game, of course, was a dramatic ending to the loss in a very Metsian fashion. Game two was a lifeless Mets offense. We're going to get into it all and break down what has been so wrong with this godforsaken ball club, but the biggest thing that has stood out by far and away is that the Mets now sit currently 10 games below 500, 15 games out, and are six series that they have lost straight now. Since Francisco Alvarez has been down with injury a month ago, the last time the Mets played the Dodgers, they have won one measly series since. And while we do have a positive Francisco Alvarez update that we'll get into shortly into the show, the greater reality is this Mets team has now free-falled so far to a point that we sit here on May 28th, 2024, discussing how this season might have already run itself. We already may have seen the reality of what the ending can be. Can the Mets dig themselves out of this hole? I have no clue. This might be a hole that they have dug themselves too deep, and while you can rightfully say it's still very early in the season, that might be true. What is also true, and as David Stern said it himself today in a pregame presser, this Mets team is playing not like a playoff team right now, and they'll have to show it in order to have the label to be said team. So Mets fans, we have so much to get into. This is not only a recap session, the doubleheader, this is a vent session, this is a therapy session. We want to answer your comments, questions, and concerns in the live chat. We're going to be answering a plethora of your questions today, everybody. Anything you got for us, no matter how hot-headed or rational that you are as a fan. Mark, I got to ask, before we get into anything, what is just the initial feeling, the initial reaction to now being 10 games below 500, and it's not even June?
The reaction is, thank God the Rangers are still in the playoffs because it gives me something else to watch. I mean, this team is just, they're borderline unwatchable. Like they don't play good baseball. They are unwatchable. They don't play good baseball. You heard David Stearns talk about it in the press conference today, how he was like, yeah, we're playing horrible defense. That was something that this team was supposed to be good at. They botched 4, 5, 6 double plays throughout the doubleheader today. I think 4 in game 1. They don't do the little things right. They don't do the big things right. There's not a lot of things that this team does well. And now we're starting to see the offense struggle again. The bullpen has not been great. I think there was a stat that there's been 9 games in the month of May that the Mets have been leading after the 7th inning, and they've lost 6 of those 9, which is almost unfathomable. When it rains, it pours, and right now it is a friggin' monsoon.
It is the monsoon is so bad that you think that there's a tornado with sharks involved. Like that is the reality of Mets fandom right now, unfortunately. And you hit the nail on the head there. And Mark, we have so much to get into. Again, guys, if you do not know who Giraffe Neck Mark is, you're one living under a rock, which is unfortunate. But I'll enlighten you. He is one of the biggest, of course, baseball YouTubers out there. Please make sure to check him out on his main channel at Giraffe Neck Mark, along with his series recaps with James Shiano, the Mets Stuff podcast that you can check out wherever you get your podcast, talking all things Mets. Both James and Mark have been on the channel plenty. Great followers of the channel. Very happy to have them here. And we have a lot to get into. I did see a big donation, and I don't know how that works. I don't know if it was backsies or what, but I did see like a $10 donation a second ago that I now don't see on my screen. And that's fine if it was backsies. I'm not going to be bothered by that. But I do want to just make sure that I didn't miss that entirely. So give me 1 second, everybody. And if you're wondering, Wardy, why are you smiles? Why are you not, like screaming your head off? It's because it's a broken record with this Mets team already. Yeah. I'm not going to come out here and be, ranting about the same nonsense consistently when I know at the end of the day that this Mets team, what a lot of the glaring holes are. And until we see change, it's just going to be a lot of the same. You're going to hear a lot of repetition. And today's show, we're going to have repetition to get into, but more than anything, I think we just have a lot of brutal honesty for Mets fans that maybe aren't ready to hear it. And you guys know I am as optimistic of a fan as they come. 100%. I'm the guy that more often than not that season, more diehard, and not more diehard, but longer tenured Mets fans usually get bothered by because of my optimism saying it's a 162 season. So for me to go out of my way to already tell you that my optimism is beyond bleak with how the Mets currently stand and their potential to make playoffs this season, when it's not all that difficult to crack a third wildcard spot nowadays, is telling of how this team is performing or lack thereof. Peter with the $2 donation, thank you so much. Peter says they Too expensive to be this bad. Blow it up. Yep, I think we're going to agree on a lot of blow it up here, Mark. And Mark, before we get into all the things not regarding just the Mets and their latest updates and around baseball, any key remarks that you would like to share just on, I guess, what your initial expectation was for the Mets initially heading into the season versus where they currently sit? How taken back are you versus, okay, I kind of expected this?
Yeah, I thought they were a 500 team that could win 5 more games than 500, 5 less than 500. So that's like 78 to 84 win team essentially is where I thought that they would lie. And this team shouldn't be as bad as they are, but they're playing, I mean, putrid baseball. The starting pitching, like imagine if we said at the beginning of the year, like Severino and Sean Manaea would have like 3 ERAs. I think Severino's in the 2s. You'd be like, oh, the Mets are winning the division, let alone having a good season. They're going to be in first place. And then you look and they're 15 out and they're 5.5 back of the wild card. And I don't know if I've had a Mets season in recent history that has felt, I mean, 2023 was pretty deflating. That one stunk.
Right.
But this one, like from the start, like we got our teeth kicked in opening day. We had that little run and it's been awful since. And it's getting really tiring to just try and make excuses for this team. They're going to step it up. They're going to play better. We're going on a year and a half, almost 200 games now, 200 games clear where the Mets have played like dog water. They haven't been good. And I like to blame Buck Showalter in the past. I apologize to Buck. Not his fault. This team just does not have it. I don't know what's wrong with them. I don't know what it is, but there is some key thing that a winning team needs and has that the Mets just have no clue how to tap into it whatsoever.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but this Mets team has so many similarities to really August of 2022 to now, where there's just a complete lack of identity. You know, we even heard Mark DeRosa was speaking on either SiriusXM or MLB Network earlier today, how, you know, whoever the leader is on this team, you know, really needs to not only be held accountable, but something needs to change. Something needs to be had there. What's your thoughts on the leadership, or again, the lack thereof with this Mets team? Because again, I know baseball teams are different than, say, our New York Rangers, where Jacob Trouba has a C on his jersey. Yeah. It's not that clear cut for every baseball team, right? So for the Mets, you think of Nimmo, you think of Alonso, and you think of Lindor. What do you make of the leadership of this core group right now, and how they've managed to flounder the way that they have now for a year and a half plus of just mediocre baseball?
Right now, it's terrible. It's inexcusable. I don't think, again, like I can't keep making excuses for what seems to be a lack of a leader. Now, that being said, there are guys who aren't leaders. Like that's not their fault. It doesn't, like, Lindor's not a leader in the way that we need him to be. Pete's not a leader in the way we need him to be. Brandon Nimmo's not a leader in the way that we need him to be. It's crazy, but it feels like Alvarez is the pulse of this team. Like you said, they've been pretty terrible since he's gone. And I don't know if that's it's definitely a plus to Alvarez. The guy's 22 years old, and we're already seeing him be an integral part of this team, even when he wasn't really even playing that well. But it's also a detriment to the roster that it seems like the youngest guy on the team was the glue, the catcher that was 22 years old that shouldn't be having these expectations.
Right.
Seems to be this missing key, this missing factor for the success of this team. I don't know how they improve the leadership. I don't know where they get it from. It's frustrating because I'm so sick and tired of hearing, we're going to play better. We're going to play better. Like, I don't want people calling each other out. I don't want guys getting in fights with each other. Like, that's nonsense. We had the whole raccoon thing with Lindor and McGill a couple years ago. We don't need more of that, but we need some emotion. This team lacks any sort of edge that winning teams have. There's no anger with this team. There's no frustration besides throwing a bat because you can't get a hit or slamming your helmet. How about we Carlos Mendoza get tossed from the game today? Just one bad call. Try to light a fire under this team's ass. I mean, anything to try and get this team going. Haven't heard of a players only meeting. Haven't heard about anybody throwing chairs in the locker room. I don't know. That's not going to fix this team. But besides Jake Diekman and Adam Ottavino, no one has really showed any sort of anger based on performance outside of, like, I love Jeff, but I popped up to the infield again. Let me throw my bat.
Exactly. It's the same thing over and over and over again with this team. And to your point earlier, you said, and mind you, for those that don't know, Mark, you know, to say he was a lover of Buck Showalter during his tenure as manager of the Mets, is not the right thing to say. Far from it. So for him to go out of his way to apologize about, his remarks about Buck in the past tells you again how much we are quickly learning as Mets fans what is the greater issue. And the fans that, again, have been pointing out the core group for a long time now, and you're like, I told you so, congratulations. Like, we understand, and we definitely are biting a bullet to a degree, our semi-optimistic Mets fans that, again, just want to see the team with the stern core succeed because that's what we have. That's what's in front of us, is what we're watching every day. But it has now been, again, 1.5, 2+ years of the same nonsense, the same Pete Alonso post-game pressers, the same Francisco Lindor spiels that he's going to give. Jeff, I'm not even going to get started on Jeff because, again, love Jeff as a person, but when it comes to his performance over the past stretch of games now, over more than the season, I've been very blunt on my thoughts about that, and I think fans can feel the exact same way. And now you get a new manager in Carlos Mendoza, and where things get really tricky for Carlos Draftneck Mark, and prove me if I'm wrong. I don't know why I'm calling you Draftneck Mark.
Yeah,
It's
that was
it's
strange.
like, I think it's because how like when we're together, you call me Wardy,
Yeah,
and even
true.
though that like we're friends, even some of my closer friends call me that, I think that's why I threw that in there. Anyways, Mark, I got to ask about Carlos Mendoza. He's a first-time manager, right? And we've already seen a lot of early trials and tribulations that he brings with being that first-time manager. But truthfully, I don't know exactly how much Carlos can do to get this team out of the rut they're currently in. His hands are tied in a lot of ways that I think, to a degree, same can be said with David Stearns. For everyone trying to go after David, which I think is just ridiculous, because it's like, if we're going to look at David Stearns when he's done, most of the pickups he's made this past offseason have been the saving grace of this Mets team thus far, especially on the pitching end. Harrison Bader is probably the most clutch team on player in this roster right now, which is ridiculous to say. Tyrone Taylor made 2 tremendous plays defensively earlier in this one and can clutch up 2 as well when he learns to hit beyond just a fastball that we know. But Carlos Mendoza is a guy where, he has all this emotion, all this flair, but it's like he's kind of stuck because he doesn't want to overplay his hand. He knows this is his first time as manager. He hopes to be here for a good period of time. I think him and David Stearns are kind of just grasping, again, this unfortunate truth that is what they adopted, what they got themselves into that they had zero control in, including, again, some of the coaching staff that's currently there. We'll get into, Mark, I want to know your thoughts on the hitting coaches, where the Mets currently stand, how soon should they be out here, those kind of things. Again, cutthroat, love that. But again, I think all of us Mets fans, even irrational Mets fans, I think we're all kind of finding the same understanding that this team is just simply not good. They're far from good. They're dog shit. They are below pond scum. And if you look at the Francisco Alvarez factor that you mentioned, and I said it as soon as he went down, literally my heart went straight to my ass when I saw him break his fall with his thumb, because I was like, that is the last thing that we could possibly need. One, I was thinking of my future bets with our amazing sponsor at BetUS, because I knew 30 to 35 home runs wasn't going to hit when that happened. One, but two, Alvarez, since being out with injury, the Mets have went 11-24 when he won series. When the Mets had Alvarez on the roster this season, 11-8. So I'm not saying Francisco Alvarez is the godsend himself, but he's very important. And no matter if it's the right or wrong thing that this Mets team is structured in a way where a young, exciting catcher is such a focal point of their team as a whole, it doesn't change the fact that he is at the end of the day. So to not have him over the past month has literally been a death sentence to this Mets team. And in more ways I think a lot of fans maybe initially realized when that injury first happened, especially with the inconsistencies on the pitching. The old saying goes, when you have hitting, you don't have pitching. When you have starting pitching, you don't have the bullpen. Like, nothing can ever be in sync of those three things, and that couldn't have been more accurate what has been the case for the past month plus. So we're going to get into shortly, everybody, rapid fire on what transpired with the Mets with their latest updates with Alvarez, Senga, and others. We're also going to get into bringing down a quick rapid fire of innings 1 through 9 in game 1. Not doing that for game 2 because the Mets had 3 hits. Simply put, the Mets didn't hit. I mean, what else? What do you want me to say that you haven't seen already? How many times this season? At least game 1, there were some positives, headlined by Tyler McGill that we'll get into in a second. But there isn't much today, and we'll get into that. But I do want to answer some comments. Of course, make sure to smash that like and subscribe button as you guys first chime in. Greatly appreciate. We want to get to as many questions that you guys have for us as possible once we're done ranting about this damn team. But before I do, Mark, ask a question for the chat as I'm going to sip a thing of water because I'm really parched at the moment.
I'll take it. You're getting all red, man.
When do I not with this team? Every single night. All right, I do see some comments here. Okay, we got talked to the donation from Peter. Thank you. Brennan Luck says $5 holla. I didn't think we would be great this year, but try to believe. I should have realized we sucked. And 95% of the time, being a negative Mets fan is right. I hate that. And it's times like this that so validate a guy like Frank. And the problem, and I know we hate it, and I think the worst part, though, is that I think two things can be true. Frank knows that in order to get people on his side, he needs to continue to rant and be him.
Yes.
He doesn't act like that, obviously, when the Mets are rolling, because he really doesn't know what to say. If anything, he's actually happy to a degree because he's a fan. He might not be overwhelming happy when it comes to the content perspective because it hurts him there, but I know Frank's a diehard fan, because at the end of the day, you have to be a sicko the way that we are to watch this team consistently as much as we do. But in the case of Frank, I think two things can be true. One, he is this overdramatic fan that we know that will do that regardless of the state of the team. And two, it also can help validate him in situations like this where, again, the Mets simply don't wake up for over a month. You know, it's like the Bears been asleep. They haven't woken up from their slumber yet. Will they ever? I simply don't know. And that's a very frustrating thing, especially when we try to at least be people in this Mets community that are not trying to be doom and gloom constantly. We are not the types that want to be sitting here talking about how much our favorite team sucks absolute ass every night. Unfortunately, our hands are tied. Like, we've tried to work around it as much as we could, but there's no way to do so right now. All we can talk about is this season done, basically? Can they get themselves out of this rut, or is it full-blown sell mode by the deadline, and there's no in between? And Michael Hoff, with a $10 donation, says the following: I retraced it. Too many typos. Gotcha, Michael. Appreciate that. I was at both games today. Drank a few margaritas. Well, the fact that you spent how much money at Citi Field with those margaritas?
Oh, they're like $40 a piece.
100%. You witnessed those two losses, and then you were generous enough to send a donation here, Michael. You are what we call a saint. Thank you. He says, that's the last dime the Mets get out of me. They're paid and a lazy lull. Blow it up. I've seen too much. Michael's fed up, and that isn't the margaritas talking. That's common sense talking, all right? You can be absolutely dazed, hungover the next day, and still have that same thought. So I'm with you, Michael. Thank you for that. Scott says, $5 holla. Closer by committee, more like choker by committee. And many gave Taylor the take sign on 3-1. He should go tonight. Taylor looked disengaged till 3-2. That wasn't ideal there. Any further remarks you'd like to share on that specific at-bat, Mark?
Yeah, so this Mets team, I've noticed, and this was even last year I had this opinion, but it's more prevalent now, and that Tyrone Taylor at bat was the perfect example of the mindset of this team, which is not that we want to beat you. It's not we're not coming out to beat you. We're not trying to beat you. We hope you let us win. Right. Because Tyrone Taylor 3-1 pitched down the cock of the plate. I mean, couldn't have been a better pitch to hit. That's a pitch you drive, and it was a fastball. All he hits is fastball, and he is dead taking with the bases loaded, 1 out. If you hit a hard ground ball and hit into a double play, fuck us. That's on us. Tough luck. Can't handle it. But you cannot take that pitch and then have a horrendous at-bat after that. That was the Mets. I knew the game was over there. Once he took that pitch, even Gary, Keith, and Ron were like, he was taking all the way. That's disrespectful to the game of baseball. That's disgusting baseball. They should be ashamed that they play like that. The Mets do not want to win baseball games because of how they're playing. They hope the other team lies down and they're able to just get the win. And that's why they suck. There's no dog in this team. That at-bat was an example, and I don't know how you recover from that, because it sends signals to everybody around the league. We're nervous. We don't trust our bats. We don't think we're better than you. We hope you walk us in for the win. Like, it's such loser behavior. That got me so hot. And then to see the horrendous at-bat he finished it with, and then McGill to come up and hit a shitty pop-up. It's like, how much of this are we going to take? What is the thought process behind this team? What is the process in general? Because it seems like everybody else in the league knows what to do when they play us. We play other teams. We have no clue. We have no idea what their pitchers throw. We don't know where their batters put the ball in play. We can't make routine plays. We can't hit the ball. They don't do anything right. And it's a month now, like you said, of playing horrendous baseball. And I hate to be a broken record, but this team right now is a bunch of losers. And unless one of them wakes up and decides they want to be a winner, this team's going absolutely nowhere.
And the best part out of everything you just said there was every team having the proper formula for this Mets team when the Mets have absolutely nothing for anyone else. Every single time that a new team comes into town or the Mets are playing an opposing team, I've literally heard quotes from, again, the opposing coaching staff or players, well, we got to make sure we run on them one. We got to take our pitches because we know they're going to walk. They are just trying to get on first as quick as they can. We are talking that the Mets are so piss poor with their approach and base running, both offensively and defensively, that defensively, they know they're going to give up multiple stolen bags a game on average. Walk rates, that wasn't even the problem today for the Mets.
No.
Pitching staff was far from the problem, really, outside of what you got. A little bit of Ottavino there. Obviously, Jorge Lopez gave up the hits and extras, but Jorge's one of those guys where I'm not going to beat him all up for that because you should have had insurance when you had, again, bases loaded, 1 out. It's every single night with this Mets team. They do the exact same thing. And literally, as I was texting my pitching contributor on the channel, who's very excited to break down, we're going to break down the Tyler McGill stuff today because Tyler was fantastic. But my man Isaac was telling me, all right, we're looking good right now. I cannot wait to see how we're going to blow this one. And he was like, I did not have Adam Ottavino bobbling a ball on my freaking Uno card, so I guess that's a new one. It just brutal. Why were you jaw dropped? Did something big happen in the Ranger game?
Shesterkin just made a crazy save, sprawled out. Igor is such a dog.
Igor is a dog. Yeah, shout out my Ranger fans out there. If you're an Islanders fan, I'm sorry. If you're a Devils fan, I'm sorry. I know I'm going to offend people tonight, but you know what? We got to be a little cutthroat when our Rangers are still in the dance at the moment. Zach Flakerton with the $5 haul says, I'm getting tired of criticism aimed at specific players. This team has fundamental problems with the culture. See Tommy Pham and Zach Short 1,000%. I can't speak on Zach Short.
What's his Short say?
Yeah, I don't know. He must have said something recently with the Braves.
I'm gonna look it up.
I know the Braves signed and then dropped away Joey Wendell, so they're just trying. I got to give credit where credit's due. The Braves hate the Mets so much that even when they're 10 games below 500, they still rather do pickups of their sloppy seconds to get any type of intel. This goes back to when Robinson Cano played a cup of coffee in Atlanta too. Like, this has been going on for so long with the Braves and the pickups that they have done. So that is far from shocking there. I don't know if Short said anything, but I do know Tommy Pham 1,000% right. I was far from offended as someone that, again, grew to love Tommy last year, met him in person too, great guy. I can tell you much so that he's blunt, he's right to the point. And there's also a reason that, and I'm sure the stat is probably even furthermore true, when Tommy Pham signed with the Chicago White Sox, the White Sox have had the same amount of wins, if not more than the Mets throughout that span. This is the Chicago White Sox.
That team
that don't even know that analytics are a thing yet. This is that Chicago White Sox that we're talking about, folks. But I digress. We have so much to get into and a lot to break down, folks. I'm going to just share it with you briefly. We got the pitching stats we're going to break down. We got the hitting stats that we're going to break down. We're going to get into our amazing sponsors on the channel. Shout out to our great friends, as always, at MLB and our great friends at BetUS. Make sure to check them out both by clicking the links down below to sign up today. MLB, again, the best MLB fantasy game out there. We'll just do the quick ad read, Mark. Going to take you away for a second here because I'm on the slide. For those that don't know, MLB, again, the best MLB fantasy game out there. If you guys like MLB The Show and playing actual MLB fantasy with your friends, combine that, this is MLB. You enter weekly tournaments after you draft your team for free, and then you can buy, sell, and trade your cards should you upgrade your cards because there's different rarities in them. So just like MLB The Show where you card collect and then play against people online or your friends, the same exact type of premise is here with MLB, the best fantasy game out there. And after you draft your team, in which I have Brandon Nimmo, Edwin Diaz, Luis Severino, just to name a few Mets on my roster currently, you enter weekly tournaments, you play against your friends and people online. If you do well in these online tournaments especially, you can win cash prizes, hundreds if not thousands of dollars. You can win Mets ticket prizes. We gave away a bunch of Mets tickets on the channel this past month, all just for signing up with my unique link and clicking the link down below, of course, to do so and enter a free tournament. It is that easy with our great friends there, and we're giving away a bunch of other awesome stuff here with our great friends at MLB, guys. Make sure to check them out today in case you haven't already. And as you guys and gals can see right here, I'm going to show you guys a little lineup that we can do briefly just to give you guys an idea on what to expect with MLB. So we are going to register for a lineup for an upcoming tournament here that begins in just a couple days. We're going to be entering a couple different ones, but let's just enter the Common All-Star here to show you how this works. And again, guys, what I love so much about this game, it's a completely different way to play fantasy baseball, to stay involved. You can, again, your cards can be upgraded based on how you do in these tournaments each week. You can buy, sell, and trade these cards for real dollars. So this is beneficial financially too if you play your cards right. And I'm taking Luis Severino as my start. Starter Edwin Diaz as my reliever. Joey Ortiz there as a utility. Gunnar Henderson, because how can he not love Gunnar? Going to put Brandon Nimmo in there. I got 2 Brandon Nimmos, so I'm going to be trading one away soon. Adley Rutschman in that group. And then to cap it off for my final player, I am going to go with Mr. Brett Baty. Even though Brett Baty might not even be on the Mets roster in the coming days, we'll get into that shortly. That is the roster I'm rolling with. Make sure to check them out today, folks. We've been playing and having so much fun. I'm not trying to brag, but I've been doing fantastic in my tournaments the last 2 ones. I'm excited to see how this one does. All depends on Baty, though, I think. So let's hop back.
This video is brought to you by BetUS
Should be running. Give me 1 second. Mark, do you hear me fine?
Hear you good, man.
We're good? Okay, Mark. Any final remarks before we just deep dive in this one?
Let's just go into it.
Let's
We got more to talk about.
Let's do exactly that, everybody. Guys, I'm still fighting a sinus infection, so on a day where the Mets didn't show up for an entire doubleheader, Wardy is sweating bullets out here to make sure you get Mets coverage on how bad this team is. Built different, as Mark said. All right, folks, let's get into all the good updates for the most part. And it starts with everyone's favorite Angel Hernandez is no more. He is officially retired over the past 24 hours or so. I'm sure that was because of a settlement. I'm sure he reached between himself and the MLB. That happens when you sue the MLB for certain things, you know, even if that's valid or not. But that was effective immediately, which is why I'm assuming that's where it stems from. But Angel Hernandez, thanks for absolutely nothing. Enjoy retirement, my man. So Hernandez is out of here. And speaking of something that I thought was very cool to share with you all, a tidbit, MLB as a whole, you know, this is called a different type of league, but given the fact of just how everyone loves to twist words, I'm going to just say the African American League is now, their stats are being implemented in Major League Baseball database. So what that means is Josh Gibson, who of course was notorious, one of the best players during his time there in the African American League, is now a stat leader in MLB in batting average, slugging percentage, and OPS. That is a massive deal. There's a lot of controversy that I've seen that's come with it too, on where people stand. They love it, they hate it, based on the metrics and all those kind of things. But that is a big thing that just was announced earlier today that we saw across baseball as a whole. And now getting into some key updates. Kodai Senga, who was shut down 3 to 5 days that we saw there with inflammation because of, you know, his tricep, his right tricep stuff going on there. He received a cortisone shot and he was caught throwing today. So after what felt like we don't know when Senga's going to be out there again and there's no timetable, he's already throwing. So in a very Metsian fashion, we have really no clue when to expect Senga back. And a season that's lost like this, there's really no rush at the moment. I don't know when he will be back, but I won't be surprised if it's not until, well, sometime after the All-Star break there. At this rate, until they prove me otherwise. And for the Mets fans that didn't think that he would be back any sooner, you're more than likely right at this point. Francisco Alvarez, big update, folks. He is advancing fast in his rehab. He will begin a rehab assignment in AA starting this Thursday. So El Troll, who has not only been a fantastic backstop defensively for the Mets, but can provide some huge power in this line. Again, that's another thing that pisses me off like no tomorrow, Mark. This team has plenty of power. This team has a lot of weapons. Truthfully, if you look 1 through 9 when they're healthy, and they just have no clue how to get this in unison. And as each passing day goes on, I don't think that we're going to have a true remedy outside of that being a Francisco Alvarez. Did he give up a goal?
No, they just missed on a breakaway. They just missed.
Just missed. Okay, noted. But Alvy, again, will be back what looks like, again, in the coming weeks. That's huge for him to start his rehab this Thursday. We love that. And now we have a massive quote here that I want to share with you all from David Stearns today in his pregame presser. When asked if he still expects the Mets to be a playoff team this year, he replies with the following, and I quote, "We haven't played like a playoff team, and that's the reality. That doesn't mean we won't, but we've got to show it. We have a group of players that is determined to play better." He, of course, went on and said that he still believes the Mets can make playoffs, and a lot of people were giving him shit. What else do you expect him to say?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Like, even if he's lying through his teeth, he's always going to make a remark like that. That's common sense. But the difference, I think, between this and, say, a Sandy Alderson, for example, is that Sandy would walk around this as much as possible and, of course, have his heavy... Really got to make sure he breathes in there the whole time so he doesn't forget. But outside of that, he wouldn't be as blunt, nearly as blunt as David Stearns. And what I liked was, one, David didn't have a smile on his face. He looks like a true Mets fan that isn't happy right now. And he knows that this team is drastically underperforming. And he also knows that where the underperformances are happening, are almost all from players that he has nothing to do with. This is all from the core group. This is all from guys that he adopted. This is not Luis Severino, who has been a stud, is looking like an all-star right now. This is not Shamanaya, that again finds himself in that category. This is not many of the great bullpen acquisitions and moves that he made throughout the offseason. This isn't Harrison Baty or anyone like that. This is just the guys that have already been here. So bear that in mind before you have a further evaluation to a degree on Mr. David Stearns. And when speaking of David Stearns, he did speak a little bit on Brett Baty and Mark Vientos, and basically the platoon might be coming to an end. Now the question is, what does that mean for the fate of one of Vientos and Baty? Because Baty, while he did have a nice home run a couple days ago in a losing fashion for the Mets, Vientos has been productive every single time he's been out there, and he's been productive in a way where I don't think you can justify taking him off the roster whatsoever. The fact that the Mets let him sit for 3 days is beyond me, regardless on if it's right or left-hand pitching, because he's been hitting against both now. So it's like you can't even use that argument. Same thing with Baty, he's got to be a lefty specialist, all these things. Like, no, it doesn't make any sense. You just want to give these guys playing time. And what I thought was interesting about that quote from David was, he said how he does think it's in the best interest for them to develop best at the major league level. Like, he doesn't think it'll happen by them just eating time in the minors. However, they are in a tight bind with their current roster configuration. So whether it's the right or wrong move, don't anticipate Mark Vientos and Brett Baty to be on the roster here forever. Expect one of them to be sent down or some type of move to be had at some point in the future. And that's really all that needs to be noted. Oh, one unfortunate note that I will share here. Jet Williams, everyone's favorite top prospect for the Mets, received a second cortisone shot in his wrist today, and now he's facing potential surgery. So if things do not go better on that front, that could be the route he goes. So again, when it rains, it pours in Mets land. That unfortunately is not a great one, but hopefully Jet can heal up and again still make a season out of this for a guy that was pushing to crack the bigs before the year ends. So talking about all the updates there, let's rapid fire this 1 through 9 godforsaken game 1 where Tyler McGill did literally everything right. So good, so right. And because he did everything right, the Mets were like, let's give him the DeGrom treatment. Let's have him carry the whole way. What do you mean he's not pitching the whole 9 innings? I don't understand. I thought he had his covered. That doesn't make any sense. You know, you'd think that with a different ownership, with different Pobo, with different manager, things would change. But I'm furthermore under the understanding that whoever signed the deal with the devil in 1986, we are dealing with it. This has exactly been what, there's no other way to justify it. There's a South Park episode just like this too, about, I forget what the context was, about someone either wanting a video game or winning a championship. It was like, all right, you can sign a deal with the devil and you'll get that, but that means that you're going to wreak havoc for this amount of years, and this is how it's going to be. He's like, okay, it doesn't impact me, it's fine. So to whichever fan did that all those years ago, I hate you. I really do, because this has not been fun. And the same thing that has been fun is this Mets game 1 through 9. Let's go through it real quick. Rapid fire, everybody. Apologies again for the nastiness, which is my throat and cough. Okay, in the first inning, Freddie Freeman with a single, and then he, not unfortunately, but Tyler McGill strikes out Shohei Ohtani with the nice spork ball there, and that inning, nothing happens. So the bottom of the first, Brandon Nimmo with a walk, Lindor, Alonso, and JD Martinez. What do those three schmucks have in common? They all strike out to Tyler Glasnow in the first inning. In the second, Tyrone Taylor robs Teoscar Hernandez of a home run. He drops it, however. Teo gets to second base with a double, but that's all she wrote. In the third, we see Mookie Betts with a single. Taylor then with a running catch would end the inning. In the bottom of the third, Brett Baty with a walk. Tomas Nido with a fielder's choice. A rare bad bunt there by Nido. Hit it a little too hard. Lindor then with a 2-run dig shot. When I tell you this was a beautiful home run by Lindor, his first at bat, he struck out on a curveball, down and in a little bit against Glasnow, who we know Tyler Glasnow is one of the best starters in Major League Baseball, understandably so. But the second time he threw that curveball, hung that bad boy right down the pipe, and Lindor made him pay. 2-run shot to right gives the Mets a 2-run lead here, and a Pete Alonso with an 0-2 single afterwards. Nimmo with a walk. Again, after the Mets get a 2-0 lead, they have multiple guys on base here, less than 2 outs, but they are unable to convert. This Ranger game is going to overtime for another time. That's absolutely insane. Shout out to my Ranger fans out there. Hopefully they leg it out there in Sunrise against those Panthers. But in the top of the fourth, Tyler McGill with a 1-2-3 inning, his first of the day. McGill not only looked fantastic with the fastball that touched 97-98 today, but he had the American Spork, he had the Splitty, which one of those pitches, I'm pretty sure was a Spork, has less RPMs and movement than even a knuckleball. It is absolutely insane what he's doing with that pitch, and it's working. We'll get into that here shortly. DJ Stewart with the walk, but nothing to show in the bottom of the fourth. In the 5th, we see Hayward with a walk. Betts strikes out to end it. Tyler McGill with a 1-2-3 6th inning, and then he strikes out the side casually there in the 7th to end his day. Tyler McGill's line, folks, for those that are unaware, was a masterful 7 innings of 3 hits, 0 earned run ball, 1 walk, 9 strikeouts. Can we please get some hype in the chat for Tyler McGill on 98 pitches? For people that say want McGill to pitch in the 8th, I can understand it to a degree, but I'm not going to give Mendy too much flack for taking him out there. Again, your bullpen should be able to get those final 2 innings done. And furthermore, before we even get there, this Mets offense had opportunities to add insurance against Tyler Glasnow, insanely enough. And because he's Tyler Glasnow, the Mets were not able to convert more than the Lindor breaking ball home run that they ripped there to right. As we then get to the 7th inning, we talk about that with McGill striking out the side. In the 8th, Reed Garrett comes in, and unfortunately, Reed Garrett continues to look like a man that is not the Reed Garrett that's unhittable anymore. He gives up a single to Jason Hayward. Yes, that Jason Hayward. Then Pages or Pages, whatever, with the fielder's choice. Baty with an error, and then Diekman comes in to face Shohei Ohtani. Thankfully, Ohtani with a fielder's choice. Freeman with an RBI single makes it a 1-run ball game, but then a strikeout on Will Smith, the catcher, would end the inning. We get to the 9th inning, and, we're not going to trust Edwin Diaz there, so we're going to put in, yes, Mr. Adam Ottavino. Adam, unfortunately, doesn't do the Mets any favors here, nor does this Mets infield defense that struggled to turn 3 what should have been double plays today. Piss poor defense leads to the Mets' demise here. Tio with the single, Gavin Lux with a single. This is a Gavin Lux that you might as well say has the yips with the way that this guy can't play competent baseball so far this season. But him, Chris Taylor, and Jason Hayward all had productive days against the Mets in Game 1, which is how you knew the Mets were going to be getting swept in this doubleheader. Things that should not be happening. It's almost like the Dodgers were losing 5 straight entering this series, in part because of these guys' very underwhelming performance. Even if they're coming off the bench, they have been absolutely anything but useful until now this series. We see then Taylor with an RBI single ties the ball game against Adam Ottavino there. Hayward with a strikeout, and then Pages with a double play ends it. And again, we saw Adam Ottavino bobble that ball there, unfortunately, in the 3rd. Mets failed again in this game to convert 3 double play balls. In the bottom of the 9th, Pete Alonso with a single, JD Martinez with a single, Harrison Bader with a walk, bases loaded, less than 2 outs in the 9th inning. All the Mets needed was a hit. All the Mets needed was a sac fly, and they would have been in this one. They would have walked it off. That was a very difficult thing for a Mets team that doesn't have competency with their offense, and they go down from there thanks to a Taylor and McNeil pop-out to end the inning. In the 10th, Jorge Lopez gets his tits lit by Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, and that's the ball game. There's nothing else to share there. That is the unfortunate reality of the Mets not adding when they need to add, and a Dodgers team that is oh so good and is going to make you pay even when they're not playing their best baseball. And furthermore, the Dodgers didn't even use Shohei Ohtani in their 2nd game of the doubleheader, nor did it matter, as of course the Mets lost 3-0. And the only thing that you guys really need to know from that one, and I'll just show you right now pitching-wise, Jose Quintana went 6 innings of 3 earned run ball that we saw there, allowed 8 hits, 0 walks, 3 strikeouts. Quintana's far from the reason why the Mets lost Game 2 today, but when you have 0 offense, the way that the Mets had absolutely none, once again, that we saw there in the 2nd game, look at all the zeros, folks. You might as well be Homer Simpson with all these freaking zeros that look like donuts because you just want to eat them up. The Mets had nothing going whatsoever. Offensively in the 1st game, again, it was few and far in between, just so many zeros, just putrid offense, lifeless to say the least was this team in a nutshell, folks. And before we take it back to my man Mark, I do just want to break down briefly a little bit pitching analysis on Tyler McGill, because again, there's one bright spot from this godforsaken game this series already, and just the Mets team as a whole right now. It was Big Drip McGill and his brilliance. That was one of the few bright spots, folks. We're also halfway to 100 likes. Thank you all so much. Continue smashing those buttons, guys. It really does mean a lot. And now to break down Tyler McGill, and then we'll bring it back to you, Mark. It is as follows. McGill's arsenal had a 4-seamer today at 53% of the time, slider at 16%, cutter at 15%, changeup at 5%, American Spork at 5%, curveball at 3%, and the sweeper at 2%. The 4-seam fastball had some extra oomph on it today that we saw. Not only did it top out at 98, but it hit 19.7 inches of induced vertical break, IVB, which is very impressive, which is something that we haven't seen McGill do to that magnitude to this point. A reminder, IVP is a way to measure a pitch's rise. So 15 to 16 is average, 17 to 18 is good, and 19 to 21 is elite, and he was sitting there right around at 19 to 20. Very good stuff there from Tyler. When he locates the 4-seam fastball in the zone consistently, like he did today, he can be very effective against even some of the best hitters in Major League Baseball that we saw against this Dodgers lineup. Still very impressive what Big Drip was able to do. Another interesting change that we saw that he made today was his slider's velo, and the spin was down, but it had 3 more inches of vertical break. It had a 50% whiff rate today, something to make note of when McGill, as he's continuing to toy with his arsenal a bit to see what works and what doesn't. And that was likely on purpose in order to get more drop on his slider and therefore tunnel better to his new high arm slot fastball, which again makes plenty of sense. The cutter also looked very impressive that we saw today. As his main secondary pitch, he was able to locate it in and around the belt of left-hand hitters, which is a spot where it is almost impossible to hit a 25% whiff rate on it today. And he's throwing both the changeup and the American Spork. The changeup is thrown a bit harder with around 1500 RPMs, while the Spork is slower at 500 RPMs. He only threw 5 changeups and 5 Sporks today. And the key thing about the Spork, again, 500 RPMs, folks, just for context, especially when it comes to RPMs with knuckleballs, that's like nothing. So it's actually really interesting how much he has taken the spin off of this Spork and yet has had the amount of whiff rates that he's had on it, especially from his first start that we saw there against the Cleveland Guardians 5 days ago. McGill outdueled one of the best pitchers in baseball today. That cannot be understated in Tyler McGill. So the fact that, again, the Mets managed to get a Tyler McGill that outdueled a Tyler Glasnow today was nothing short of brilliant. Just fantastic stuff that we saw there from him today. And on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm easily giving him a 10 out of 10 in Tyler McGill. My man Isaac gave him an 11 out of 10. That's how much he was raving about him. Everybody in the chat, 1 out of 10. Let me know how you feel about Tyler McGill's performance today. And Mark, my question to you is, where would you rate him and what was your overall takeaway? If there was one bright spot, it was certainly him.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really only positive thing to talk about in these 2 games. He was fantastic. I tweeted out that Tyler McGill's like that ex-girlfriend. She breaks up with you. That's when McGill's bad. And you're like, I hate him. I don't want to hear from her ever again. I don't need her. I'm done with her. And then she sends you like a, hey, what's up? How you doing? And you're like, damn it, I'm back. Like Tyler McGill, I'm so back in. He was throwing 98 today. Like you said, fastball is averaging 96. When that fastball is at that velo, it's a huge difference for him. He can't sit below 95. He gets above 95. That's when he's successful. That slider was fantastic. The called strike rate of 40 or called strike whiff rate, CSW of 40% on that slider is phenomenal, along with the fastball being at 38%. He was just really in control. And now that splitter being what looks like a legitimate pitch right. It's an outlier. It's crazy. It's disgusting. Like you said, Isaac has been talking about it, is like this pitch is really good. And for a guy like McGill who lacks maybe that elite pitch, even just being able to throw 6 pitches along with this new slider in today's start, massive for what Tyler McGill can do going forward. Of course, I still think it's going to be a roller coaster with him this season. I'm not expecting him, and I never will, to be an ace in this team. I'm not like, here he is, here's our number 1 guy that's back. People have called him like Jacob deGrom in the past, but he's doing things, or the things that he did today made me feel really optimistic about the future of him on this team, the future of him as a starting pitcher, and just where he can go moving forward. Huge start. And again, this is kind of part of the whole Mets thing too. He's a guy who, relatively speaking, is fighting for a spot in this rotation. I don't think anything's given to him by any means yet. And he stepped up when he had to against one of the best lineups in Major League Baseball, one of the best offensive teams in the Dodgers. You look at the guys who have done well on this Mets team this year, it's the guys with their backs up against the wall, the guys with things to prove, the guys who are playing for that next contract. While Tyler McGill is going to be on the Mets for the next couple of years, he wants to be a part of that rotation. He does not want to be a reliever. We know how much it meant to him to make the team out of camp. And now they have the 6-man rotation. I mean, he wants to make sure that he's not going anywhere. And if he keeps up the performances like this, he's not moving anywhere. They better not get him out of this rotation anytime soon.
Right. And what stings most about an outing like this, and this goes directly in hand with when we've seen the flashes of brilliance from even a Jose Buto, who, funny enough, was awarded, I believe it was International Player of the Week there that we saw in the minor leagues. Almost like he shouldn't have been sent down to begin with. But hey, that's a discussion for another day, apparently, right? Jose, again, a guy that will be back with the Mets shortly, had to be sent down minimum 10 days once he was, and he couldn't come back unless there was a guy in the injured list going down. But McGill, my big question with him, and shout out to Julie as well. Julie McGill, awesome mom, great follower of all the Mets podcasts and shows here. I really appreciate her. And this is a question for even Julie. I want to know if she has the answer to this, if she's listening at all. Tyler McGill, where does he top out when it comes to getting the best out of him? Because we saw the brilliance today against a Dodgers team, mind you, that I know has been floundering lately, has been playing far from their best baseball that we know. But McGill, again, every single season shows these flashes of brilliance. but there's nothing in unison because after a couple starts, the walk rates continue to get worse, and then he deals with an ailment, and then that's basically that. And then we're like, okay, he's best suit for the bullpen. Do you think that there is still a path for Tyler McGill to be an effective every 5th day or 6th-day starter for the Mets here? Or do you think that the outing that we got today is something that, again, will not be sustainable?
No, I mean, listen, I don't know if it's sustainable by any means to go 7 innings against the best lineup in baseball like that, but he is very capable of being an everyday starter in this team, someone who's very valuable. We've seen him pitch valuable games before. We've seen him give this team big innings. And it really does come back to, like, maybe he hasn't really been fully healthy. Maybe because of the pressure that there was last year, he was pitching a little bit under the weather, a little bit hurt. Even this year, like, he wanted to make the team. And then we saw the fall off instantly, followed by the IL stint. And for him to come back as strong as he did today makes me think that maybe he was a guy who was trying to be a little bit of a dog. He was like, I got to play through this. This is my spot. If I leave, give someone else the opportunity. Again, I'm not going to say that Tyler is going to go 7 innings and strike out 8 and dominate the Dodgers every single time he goes out there. But this was the last couple times now that we've seen him pitch have been really, really encouraging starts as to the kind of pitcher that Tyler McGill can top out at. Like you said, like, he has the ability to shut down the lineup. He has the ability to take over a game as a pitcher. But even so, that raises his floor, which is something that I think was concerning the most with Tyler. He's probably going to be a really good reliever. He would be a great multiple inning guy or a great setup man or whatever it end up being. But now that floor keeps getting higher and higher as he keeps working on these pitches, getting that velo back and looking as solid as he has.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with you. I think for me with Tyler, I just want to see him stay healthy.
Yes.
And just see the consistency. You know, like the same way I'm so fed up with this Mets team at being consistently inconsistent is the same way that I want Tyler to go out there and have a couple more. I want to see him go out there in his next, say, if he has 3-4 starts, God willing, healthy, no issues, give us solid anywhere from 5 to 7, inning ball, keep us in the ball game, 2 to tops 4 earned runs allowed. Keep the walk rates. The walk rate's the big thing. Tyler struggled with the walk rate going all the way back to spring training last year, and he never figured it out. He literally didn't. There wasn't any point in the season where he was like, okay, Tyler McGill, like, he's good for more than 2 starts in a row where he's not going to be walking half the guys out there. And speaking of a guy that struggled a lot with his walk rate and has been inconsistent in his Mets tenure, but has good stuff, just like Tyler McGill, is a man that's making his season debut tomorrow, and David Peterson. Not to get on a tangent here because we're talking about today's games and not tomorrow, but briefly, I just want to know, what's your thoughts on David Peterson? Because for me personally, David was a guy that in 2022 impressed the hell out of me. Of course, when he made his debut against Boston in 2020, I was like, okay, the Mets got a guy here. You know, top pick was, of course, coming out of Double-A when they brought him up and was effective. But it was really about, one, making sure that he's not hating that slider, especially if he's doing lefty versus righty. When the slider was right, it was a thing of beauty, especially down and away to those lefties. The fastball up, again, can touch 97. It can get in those high digits. It's great, but the walk rates have, again, killed a pitcher like this. So David Peterson, who's worked in this pitching lab a lot in Port St. Lucie throughout his rehab, which I think has been very effective for a lot of these Mets pitchers. What do you have to say about him making his season debut tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be watching because I'm sick in the head. It's not.
There's nothing else to do. We just got to do it.
Yeah, I'll go on a limb and say when they lose, it's not going to be his fault. I'm sure they're going to have 3 hits tomorrow or whatever. But I'm not going to say this start is the make or break one for David Peterson, but we are approaching that time now of he's got to stay healthy and he's got to figure it out. We can't keep having this Jekyll and Hyde with David Peterson, which we've seen, because, again, those 100 innings in 2022 were fantastic. He was great for this team. He was so important. He gave big innings. That slider was one of the best sliders in baseball when it was on in 2022. And then last year, we saw 111 innings of being terrible. So the consistency needs to come for David Peterson. I'm hoping the lack of consistency was because he wasn't 100%. And I hope now that the Mets have taken their time, he's had a full chance to rehab, that he'll be able to come back strong. He has the ability to be a very good pitcher, just like we said with Tyler. Just got to prove it now. This Mets team needs to prove it. This team has too much, I'm good. We'll be okay. No, fuck that. No more, we're going to be okay. We have to be okay. I will be okay. I'm going to be better than this. And hopefully David Peterson's part of that.
Right. Stop giving us the same nonchalant, less than hopeful responses when we all can read the face too. Even I love Pete to death, but like, you can look at Pete. It's like when Pete says the things over half the time he says, it's like, who are you trying to fool here? Trust me, Pete. Trust me when I say all of us would prefer if you just went out there and if you were blunt and be like, you know what? I don't have all the answers right now. I'm just trying to work on my game the best I possibly can and kind of go from there. Like, that's all you can really ask for a guy that isn't even labeled the captain in a clubhouse the way that Alonso isn't right now. And speaking of Alonso, speaking of Lindor, speaking of Demo, let's get back to what has been the big hot button topic for a lot of Mets fans throughout this past month. And that's really a realization as to, can this Mets team get anywhere with this current core group? And you can throw Jeff McGill in that mix if you want, even though that McNeil's impact is to a much lesser degree positively than the other three that we have just statistically seen over the past year and a half. But when you look at the core, when you look at it being Alonso walk here, when you look at you're going to have to deal with Lindor no matter how much you love or hate him, and Lindor has been batting around 300 since being put in the leadoff spot. So again, not that we're going to credit Mendy with everything, that's when things are going right. That is one of the few things that you can say has went well to this point. I just got to ask you, where do you stand when it comes to the core, and what is your faith or lack thereof, and then being, again, the drivers behind this offense for more than 2024?
Theoretically speaking, this core should work. The way that the numbers work and the way that baseball's played and the things that we deem valuable on the offensive side of things, Nimmo, Alonso, Lindor should be a core that works. But we're reaching a point now where it has worked less than it has worked positively, than it's worked well. And I'm left every single day, every single game, flip-flopping where I go. One day I'm like, all right, let's just trade Pete at the deadline. Like, let's go get something else. I love Pete. It's going to tear me apart. But we're not winning with him. What are we doing without him? Like, Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani couldn't do it in Los Angeles. Sometimes the rest of the team, like, it just stinks. But in this scenario, Pete's not playing that well either. So it's so complicated. I've even, like, in my head, I've been like, do we try to trade Lindor? Try to get rid of that contract? Like, these are the thoughts that are going on through my head because, again, it's such a mind-blowingly weird situation where, again, on paper, this core should be really good. This should be a top 10 offense in Major League Baseball based on those three guys right there and everybody else doing their job to just even an average level. Lindor's a 120 WRC plus guy. Oh, Panthers won. Damn,
I know.
sucks.
I just turned the TV off. Dude, literally, what a rains of pours, dude. That's all I can say.
Okay. But yeah, like on paper, like they're all 20% or better than league average hitters at the plate. Like Lindor is struggling right now. He's below it, but he was 120 last year. He was 125 the year before that. Pete's a guy who's 120 to 140. Nimmo, even when he's struggling, like average-wise, is still a 120 to 130 guy every single season. And yet there's something so dramatically wrong with this team. And I can't put my finger on it. And it gets me to the awful blow it up mindset of just how many more times are we going to try it before we realize that maybe the problem is that we don't try and change anything. Maybe the problem is the core. I'm not there yet. I'm not believing in that. I still think that these guys are good baseball players. I trust in the numbers. I trust in the stats. They tell me that this team should be, or this core should be better. This core should be able to win baseball games. But at some point, how long are we going to give them before we try something different? Because it hasn't worked.
I think this is more the creator in me than the fan, because the fan, even as emotionally attached as I am to the team, I know how to push myself away from the team when, especially things are going bad. Like, I'm still going to be paying attention, but maybe I won't watch, first pitch to last pitch, especially if they're in a really bad rut. And say it's a lost season, where it's been the case a lot of times here in Mets land, unfortunately. But the creator in me wants change and really wants change fast. Yes. And I don't mean that in the sense of, okay, blow it all up, get rid of everybody, just play all the kids. Because I don't mean it in a irrational way, because I know that won't happen. I mean it in a way where actually it can and more than likely will happen, which is the following. Coaching changes need to be had. Eric Chavez, Jeremy Barnes, get the fuck out of here. There is no reason for either of them to be here. I liked Chavez when he first came here. I'm sure he's a great guy. Again, fantastic Gold Glove, was an awesome player during his time with the A's. Doesn't mean he's a fit for the Mets here, because the guy couldn't even handle a bench role for a guy that had aspirations of pushing for a managerial job. He interviewed for a managerial job elsewhere over the past year or so, didn't get it. I fucking wonder why, with the way that he's been underwhelming, just handling a hitting group the way the Mets have. Again, 2022, the formula for success was small ball with getting some bombs from Pete and Lindor. Not sustainable at all. When you didn't have power outside them, you had nothing. And when you didn't have the small ball and the luck going in your way, the way that Spencer Strider would famously say, we had absolutely nothing. There were no proper adjustments, and Daniel Vogelback and Darren Ruff Darren Ruff isn't in the league. Vogelback is about to be out of the league for a reason.
Yo.
Tyler Naquin has been in the league for basically a year now.
Since that day, since he played for the Mets.
Oh, wow. It's almost like other teams had a better grasp of these players than maybe the Mets did. I digress. But you get on to not only what's happening there, then Barnes is a full hitting coach last season while the Mets do nothing. Like,
Nothing.
It's such a piss poor approach. And I'm truly flabbergasted that we sit here a year ago today, and the Mets were somehow better than what they currently are.
It's shocking.
That is so shocking to me. Because, again, I was telling everybody in the offseason, heading in now, we're going to go through a lot of trials and tribulations this season. This is a Mets season that, again, we still may have yet to see the best of it. That 12-3 run might not be the best thing. We still have plenty more baseball to be had. No matter how much you want to go through it or not, Mets fans, the season isn't over tomorrow, okay? So, in the meantime, what can they do with the ensuing 110-plus games, whatever they have going left here? And there's a lot of baseball to be had. But if you get out Chavez, you get out Barnes, that's how you make an immediate change. And you know what? I'm going to say it. If I hear another fucking report of Pete Alonso banging down the door of either the GM or whoever because of a coaching change being had, then I'm sorry. That's part of the problem.
Dude,
that goes
it's
with. Like that. That is where I say, okay, Pete, I love you not only as a person, as a player, but at the end of the day, maybe it just isn't the right fit. Because these are things where we cannot be having Jeff McGill getting in a temper tantrum with Rhys Hoskins to the point where it's the demise of the Mets for an entire series. That's 1,000% true. Yeah, I'm all for being a part of emotion. I love seeing them get ramped up, but their game ramps up in the worst ways possible. They're being petty little bitches that are trying to, again, exemplify their problems onto others and then think that that's the right route to go. So when it comes to the coaching staff, Eric, Jeremy, sayonara, bye-bye, have fun.
Get ready for this stat. Get ready for this stat.
Give
So
it to
for
me,
those
please.
of you at home, I did some research today, and if you're not familiar, there's different zones with different classifications in the strike zone and around the strike zone. So you have the heart of the plate, which is basically the 9 zones that are supposed to be your happy spots. So there's supposed to be the pitches that are the most hittable. That's the middle of the plate.
Is this Baseball Savant?
Yeah, Baseball Savant. You can find this stuff. So I was like, you know what? Because I agree with you. Chavez has got to go. Barnes got to go. Burn down the hitting department. Whatever they do on the pitching side, I mean, that they should protect it at all costs. On the hitting side, it's almost like they have no clue. But when we look at what the Mets hitters are able to do on pitches in the heart of the zone this year, in terms of run value, and I put the minimum to players that have seen 10 pitches, that includes Joey Wendell on this list. So that's how few at-bats you can have. There is not a single player on the New York Mets that has a positive run value on pitches in the heart of the zone. For context, they are the only team in Major League Baseball without a player that has a positive run value in pitches in the heart of the zone. For those of you at home who are wondering, what does this mean? That tells you that the Mets are either taking too many pitches in the heart of the zone or they're doing absolutely no damage on the pitches that are the easiest to hit. It is shocking. It is crazy. They have 3 guys with 0.
This entire team is Daniel Vogelback is what you're telling me.
Yeah, it kind of is a little bit.
My God.
There is 0. They have 3 guys with 0 run value in the heart of the zone this year. It's Francisco Alvarez, who hasn't played in a month. Tyrone Taylor, who's been pretty decent, but, 0's not good. And Joey Wendell. Otherwise, the next highest, Tomas Nido, DJ Stewart. Where's Francisco Lindor? -9 on the heart of the zone. Brett Baty, -9. Brandon Nimmo, -6. Pete, -5. These are shockingly bad numbers. Shockingly, some of the worst in baseball. When you look at, there are 400 players in Major League Baseball, according to Baseball Savant, that have seen a total of 10 pitches that can track for this swing take leaderboard. The Mets have an overwhelming amount in the bottom quarter. And that right there tells me that, again, like you said, if Pete loves Eric Chavez, if these guys love Eric Chavez and they're going to get pissed that he's going to lose his job because he should no longer be the hitting coach of this team. How much leash do you give him? You should have played better. It should have worked. If you want to keep your buddies around, play the game better. It's that simple. You get fired from your job every place else when you don't perform it well.
Right.
Why would the hitting coach matter just because you guys like him? It's not fucking working. It's time to move on. The approach is dog shit. Whatever they're doing is broken. I've never seen anything like this before. It is shocking how messed up they are at the plate.
It makes so much sense, though, because think of every at-bat a guy like Alonso's had so far this season, the type of hits and homers he's gone. Of course, there have been some meatballs thrown at him that he's taken advantage of, but they really have been few and far in between. How many pitches? We're going again, I don't care if it's JD fucking Davis or if it's Daniel Vogelback. It is the same story, but now in unison with this entire team. 93 heat right down the dick, and they're swinging through it every single time. Like, here's the thing. And for fans out there that like to be closed-minded, say, you know what? I just care about the Mets. I don't want to focus on other teams in the league. Please focus on other teams in the league because that'll help you understand if what's going wrong with your team is something that is kind of natural going on with others. Like, every team goes through ebbs and flows. Every team goes through highs and lows. There's a reason why the Dodgers were, again, not playing good baseball up until the series now against the Mets, where I'd argue they still aren't playing good baseball.
Great place to get hot.
This is what I mean. Most of the teams the Mets have also played this season, they haven't even played nearly to their best. Like the Atlanta Braves, a shell of that. And now they lost Ronald Acuna Jr., and I will just say right now, I know a lot of Mets fans are, laughing, at Braves fans and stuff. I don't care if you sympathize with the Braves fan base or not. I'm not asking that, but I do feel for Ronald. So for him, I wish him a speedy recovery because he's great for the game. I don't care if he's on pretty much my least favorite team. Ronald Acuna Jr. is an absolute star in the game today, and it's terrible to see what happened to him. So to him, I'm sincerely sorry, especially to Luis Angel, because, that's a family dynamic going on. But the Braves fans, that's a completely different discussion. I won't sympathize there nearly as much. Now, reeling myself back in this one, you want to talk about piss poor stats? Let's continue the discussion here. And this comes from Anthony DeComo earlier today. The Mets have blown 5 of their last 7 save opportunities and 8 of their last 14. Edwin Diaz, Adam Ottavino, Reed Garrett, and Jake Diekman have all blown saves over that stretch. So, for a Mets team that, again, had late heroics throughout that 12-3 run because they weren't hitting a fucking lick against any competent starter in the first 7 innings of the game, just having late heroics and getting lucky, now the problem is that even if they're getting these late heroics and being lucky because they didn't hit the starter throughout the entire course of the game, now they're having an inconsistent bullpen. You have a $100 million closer that we all love in Edwin that is far from being the Edwin that we know and expect. The confidence level is not there, and I'm beyond pissed off. I don't care what anyone says. I would have put Josh Walker in that situation the other day against the Giants than putting Edwin in a save situation after he pitched in the 7th the day prior. Makes no sense to me whatsoever. How are you going to try to tell a guy, let's get your confidence right. We're going to put you in non-saves. The next day, it's a 1-run ball game. You're in there, buddy.
Figure it out, man.
Like that's where I have a gripe with a guy like Mendoza, because that's where the lack of maturity on the managerial end comes into play. But offensively, too, going back to what you were saying, Francisco Lindor, he's a low ball hitter, loves those breaking balls, especially down and in the zone that he can rip. He ripped, of course, a hater today that we saw. Any fastball, even if it is 92, again, we are talking just either middle or up slightly away that we saw again today against him. He doesn't know how to save his life. Any heater that is slightly up in the zone, that again, a lot of guys are hacking. Even Jeff McNeil can at least hack for foul constantly. Lindor has no recipe for whatsoever. That's a major problem. And I love Francisco Lindor. I think both things can be. I think both things can be true. He is at his best one of the best shortstops in Major League Baseball, and as worse, almost unwatchable. And the problem is that this is a Mets team that together has been unwatchable for a good portion of the year. So for the fans, I want Lindor gone. I don't completely disagree with what you're saying, but the reason why I refute it so much is I'm going to take a Lindor sample size of the past 2 seasons over 50 games into a year 1. And 2, I also know that there isn't a chance in hell he's going anywhere anytime soon. That's the reality, whether you love it or hate it.
The Dodgers want him.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't make any sense. And why would the Dodgers want him when they already have the best shortstop in baseball, Mookie Betts, that, again, just picked up a shortstop glove, was like, haven't played since high school, but that's fine. Let me dust it off. Not a problem. So, yeah, we have major issues in Mets land. I think we've all kind of seen certain things from a mile away. But we do see everybody in the chat here, folks, and people are going, ranty with each other and stuff. I want to defer to you guys now. Before we get in close to wrapping things up, I want to hear from you, everybody. What are some key questions or comments that you have that you'd like to share with Mark and I to answer in the live chat? Please let us hear. Again, this is a Mets family here. This is a vent session. We're never going to be targeting you guys or anything like that. Even if we completely disagree with the take, we want to hear it and we want to hear your voice. So have it heard right now, folks. We will be taking live callers hopefully sometime this week, either tomorrow if I don't have a special guest, so be on the lookout. Especially, and I told Mark, because we were going to do the show initially yesterday prior to the rain out, and I need to hear everyone's perspective beyond my own right now, not only because of the fact that I really want to, and I've been wanting to incorporate more collaboration, but because I can only say so much. It's the same. It's literally the same thing every single night. And that's why you coming in, throwing some numbers at me that I haven't heard before is important. But also, again, what we can agree upon is the coaching staff being changes being had there. Okay. So question you real quick, Mark. And again, this goes for everybody. What changes do you think need to be had with this team that are understandable? To anyone that thinks that a complete fire sale is going to happen right away, it's not going to happen. Even if the Mets are complete sellers by the deadline, it will not be that drastic yet. So bear that in mind. Try to think as rational as you can with this one. Mark, outside the coaching staff, is there anything that you think should be close to an immediate change with this Mets team? Whether it's bringing up some kids, sending down some guys, or cutting with some dead weight with guys currently on the roster?
I think it's time to put some pressure on some guys. I think Jeff McNeil needs a little pressure. I think Luis Angel Acuna, while he didn't start off the year well, I think he's been swinging the bat better the last couple weeks.
2 for 4 with a home run today, I believe.
Yep, hit a nice home run. I don't know if he's ready, but I want to throw some guys into the fire. Let's find out. Let's do something. We got to put some pressure on these guys. Even I wish Drew Gilbert was back because, man, Starling Marte's really stunk as well too. That guy's really stinking it up. Who would have thought? This whatever they have done. Tomorrow, start the season fresh, 0-0, whatever. The Mets need to get to 84 wins probably to make the playoffs. Let's just aim for 81. Got to win 60 more games the rest of the season. 0-0, work towards that goal. And whatever you've been doing on the offensive side, take it, burn it, run it over with a car, put it on fire. Whatever it is, start fresh, start new. You can't keep doing the same thing and expect different results. They have figured you out, and by the major leagues, every other team in baseball has figured out the Mets approach, has figured out your weakness. It is time to make an adjustment. And if the Mets don't make an adjustment within the next couple weeks, the season's over. This team will no longer exist as we know. Pete Alonso will be a Chicago Cub, whatever he will be. Who knows who's safe? Who knows who's not? And the happy core, this is like the part 2 of like the Conforto, Dom Smith, like bullshit that we had a couple years ago. It's time to tear it up if they can't keep it going. If we get to the end of June and this team is still 10, 15 games under 500, blow it up. I want Alvarez to be safe. I want Christian Scott to be safe. Those guys aren't going anywhere.
Dogs, yes.
But outside of them, trade them. If you can make this team better, we might have to start from scratch. I don't know, man. I hate being this way so much because it's crazy. There are steps that need to happen before you make those decisions. Like you said, with firing Chavez, with getting rid of Jeremy Barnes, with whatever it has to be. But I think you almost need to put it in front of these guys. Team say, hey, it's May. We suck. The division's over. Division's over. We're playing for the wild card now. If you guys want to continue to play baseball the rest of this season, it is time for you to wake up. Somebody become a leader. Somebody take responsibility. Someone have accountability and fire these guys up because, wow, they're playing such boring baseball.
And it comes down to the mentality of pretty much every player on this roster. It's not about the pure talent because we know a lot of it are talented. And that's where a guy like Tommy Pham sticks out so much to me because Tommy Pham rolled in here last year, and when everyone else was doing their shit and doing absolutely nothing, Tommy was like, I'm just going to play my game. Like, I'm not going to let you impact me. I'm going to try to make sure that I am a trade deadline target for a buyer by the deadline. And that's exactly what he did. Like, Tommy is as advertised no matter where he goes. The Mets need guys on this team like a JD Martinez, for example. I know that JD, of course, has been underwhelming in certain aspects in his Mets tenure. He has not had the pop, the true power that we were hoping. He's won gap to gap. He's hit for high contact. He also strikes out everyone, like crazy. And here's the thing, though. I'm not overwhelmed by that because I always have known that about JDM's game. He literally was in the 1 percentile, I think, in what percentage last year. So anyone that thinks that he isn't going to strike out a shit ton is silly. But the lack of bombs has been underwhelming, but for the most part, JDM's approach hasn't changed, and we've seen it on full display. We have seen JDM also pick up batting cleanup plenty in times where, again, guys that have been in that spot for the Mets haven't, but there hasn't been anything in unison. When that has going, the bullpen has floundered, or when the bullpen was looking right, it was with the Mets having no offense throughout the entire game. Like, again, Daniel Nunez pitching too shutty today as a 27th man. Thank you. Again, our Johan Ramirez replacement, who's now with the Dodgers, funny enough, we'll probably see him tomorrow. That's just one of those things where you want to bring in guys and you want to have guys that don't deviate from their game. They understand the information around them, and they appreciate that, but they take it only to a degree. I think between the influx on the complete differences in approach since Steve Cohen became owner. Let's not forget, we've won under at least 3 different GMs during that time, at least 3 different managers, like a complete overhaul of coaching staff and front offices. You can't expect to have everything sunshine and rainbows when you're trying to build something that isn't sustainable until you have it in unison and in a structure consistently for multiple years on end. And this is as I was talking with Fuzzy, just, when he was on the chill last week on the Guardians series, we did a recap together, and Fuzzy and I said it perfectly. The Guardians are, well above 10 games above 500 because they know what the philosophy is as soon as they get in that clubhouse. It doesn't matter who it is. They know exactly what their role is, and they know exactly how to get the best out of themselves with their great player development. The problem is the Mets just made these hires in Chris Gross. They just made these hires in Andy Green. And these are guys that might make a drastic difference, but it can't be overnight. And no matter how much we want to be otherwise, we've adopted a current roster that has a lot of dead weight and a lot of piss poor decisions for a Steve Cohen that tried to be buying a championship, and in harsh realities, you just can't do that with all the turmoil that you had in a short period of time. So this Mets team, we know, has a lot of things that need to be changed, and I'm really excited to get to your comments now, everybody, as to what those changes could be or should be. Lou with the $3 donation, thank you so much. He says, Brandon Beltran. Carlos Beltran has been a hop-on topic every single year, and while he has had more of an impact with the Mets, he has been traveling with them more than he did last year. I don't know if Beltran is an answer for anything right now, because I don't see Carlos Smith. Is it crazy for me to say that even if the Mets completely free fall for the entire rest of the season, I don't really expect Carlos Mendoza to be gone? Like, is that a stretch for me to say?
I don't think so. Unless we start to see like shades of Mickey Callaway where like they bat out of order, or
Right.
like they're doing things that professional baseball teams should not be doing. Like, yeah, the Mets are playing poorly, but relatively speaking, like they're not doing anything out of the ordinary that bad teams don't do. It's not like they're forgetting how the lineup works or putting in like hurting pitchers' arms. Like, he's not doing anything that makes me think there's malpractice in like how he's managing the game.
Right. Outside of some head-scratching bullpen decisions sometimes.
Yeah, but like also at the same time, like this team and the way that they've been playing, I don't know, give it a shot. Like, he changed up the lineup. I respect him for trying that. He has used guys in the bullpen when they've been hot, and he's used them in weird situations at times, and it's worked, and sometimes it hasn't. He's still learning how to be a manager. It's one of those things that very few guys step in the first year. First-year managers rarely step in and are automatically just like studs with how this game works. That's what makes them special. My faith in Mendoza hasn't, changed whatsoever just yet, but it's something to monitor. But I'm with you. I don't know. How do you cut him for 1 year when your star shortstop has an OPS at 600, your star first baseman has an OPS at 710? Yeah, like everybody's playing bad. That's not really his fault at the end of the day.
And these are, again, struggles to a degree we have seen in recent years. It's not like that this is the first time, Francisco Lindor is having a slow start. No, we got Lindorks that have been going after him since his slow start in 2021. That hasn't changed for some fans. The same way that we have people that since Pete Alonso really labored last season, even prior to the Charlie Morin injury, I'd like to make that clear. He was not playing good baseball leading up to his wrist gain hit, but then it made it a lot worse because he rushed back. He was back in like 12 days when he should have probably been out, multiple weeks, north of a month, to be fully healthy, to try to help save the team in what was already going to be a lost season. And Alonso, of course, floundered and struggled to go opposite field. I feel that same way with Jeff. Just a lack of approach there. But how much does that fall on Mendoza? I just don't think it's enough unless we truly see with our eyes some drastic things happening where it's like, okay, push comes to shove, something needs to happen. Because more than anything, I want to see the Mets start to have some faith in their decisions. And David Stearns, this was a David Stearns hire. So when it comes to Carlos Mendoza and when it comes to these guys in the front office, those are his boys. So if you see him be cutthroat at any of them, that tells you that he, made the wrong decision right away. And that now we need to look at it from the David perspective too. Joey Wendell, I like how quick he was in cutting him away. I think that was a smart move.
Yes.
The same way with, Zach Short and others. Like, I think for what David Stearns could actually control at this point in the season, I think he's done a pretty damn good job of it, making those immediate changes to the best of his abilities. I get the Jose Buto debate can certainly be up there, but it's nothing to a drastic degree because it's not like Buto is the offense, right? And that's been far and away the glaring hole with the Mets in this lineup. So let's get to some of these comments now and see what you have to say. Because again, guys, we want to know how you feel about the Metsies right now, no matter how much you love or hate them. We do see some comments here. First, Christopher Cancel says, You said teams go through struggles, Wardy. Look at the Yankees cruising like it's nothing. Here's the thing. This is a 162. The Yanks are playing great baseball right now. I promise you, they will go through a rut at some point this season where they are underwhelming. It might not be nearly to the degree like a month for the Mets, because normal baseball teams don't just go through ruts like the Mets are currently going through. But every team goes through ebbs and flows. So yes, Juan Soto is an MVP caliber player, and Steve Cohen's going to try to throw him a $600 million bag this offseason. We'll talk about that when is the time to talk about that. But in the meantime, Yanks are rolling, and that's just how it is. Let's see here. Why are Mets fans surprised on how bad the team is? Now, that's an interesting question to me, and Mark, I'll defer this to you, because to elaborate on this just a little bit, it's like, okay, I went into the season just like you, thinking that this could be around a 500 ball club, looming, above or below, by the deadline to buy and pushing for playoffs, more than likely. Even with the Mets maybe selling some guys, I do think that they will still be buyers. Same way a guy like Eric Fetty, I think, makes so much sense for the Mets, just on the pitching end, with the White Sox that David Stearns just missed out on this offseason. Offensively, I don't know where they would add there, but with our expectations heading into the year versus where they are now, I don't think it's wrong for, a kind of more trying to be rational, somewhat level-headed fans like ourselves say, okay, we are underwhelmed, because at the end of the day, I don't think any rational fan truly had on their, on their card, their bingo card, that the Mets would be 10 games below 500 by May 28th. If you thought that way, it's hard for me to not think that you've been an internal pessimist, even when things have went right for the team. Am I wrong?
Like, Pacoda is one of the Baseball Prospectus
right,
things that does projections for the year. And I think going into the year, the Mets were at 80 or 81 wins, which I could double check for you guys real quickly here. Yeah, so for the Mets, they were projected 83.6 wins and to possibly make the wild card, to be a wild card team. So I know everyone in the Twitter world and the online world's like, oh, it was so obvious this Mets team sucks. No, it's not. Again, the numbers, the stats, the data tell you they shouldn't be this bad. Even right now with how poorly the team's playing, Pacoda has them projected for 78.4 wins on the year. That to me feels like not going to happen based on how this team's playing. And that's a failure every season. It's a terrible year. They're not making the playoffs with that. But even still, they have a 12.7% playoff chance, according to Pacoda, with how bad things have gone. So the idea that it was obvious is that this Mets team stinks as bad as they do, get out of here with that. Again, a broke clock is right twice a day.
Right.
You talked about Frank the Tank.
Exactly. Yes, that's my point. He's been preaching this every day for the past decade. If
you say something long enough, one time it's going to happen. I mean, it's not impressive when you repeat yourself over and over and over again, and you happen to be right. It's more impressive when you're consistently correct. I don't know, man. This team shouldn't be this bad, but I will say there are no signs of them getting any better right now.
No, there isn't any signs of them getting any better right now. I will preface this, and this is why I still have a sliver of faith. We'll get into it shortly. It is Francisco Alvarez, and I'm going to elaborate on that in a minute. I know that we're already over an hour in this one. I won't be much more long-winded, everybody. We'll wrap things up in the next 10 to 15 minutes, but before we do, let's hear a word from our other amazing sponsor of the show here briefly, our great friends at BetUS. In case you guys and gals don't know BetUS is America's #1 sportsbook, so make sure to check them out today with our 125% bonus on your first, not one, not two, but 3 deposits by clicking the unique link down below in the description to sign up today with all your sports betting needs. And please make sure you bet responsibly, folks. When we do our pregame shows weekly on the channel, which we may be doing a pregame show tomorrow for David Peterson's start, so be on the lookout for that. It will be a couple hours before the game, barring any changes right now, folks. And in that I usually share my weekly picks. And Mark, I'll get to him in a second. He can attest. I'm not on the heater anymore, but I was on an absolute heater with my betting for a solid 2 weeks, and we're looking hot. We've cooled off a little bit since then, but I'm feeling good again, folks. And if you want to tail any of my picks, there's this one that I will tell you all, again, highly implore you all to bet at your own risk, of course, and that is the Dallas Mavericks tomorrow night against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Already the Mavs have been tremendous in this series against the T-Wolves. Anthony Edwards, that many deem is the second coming of MJ, going to be the face of the league once LeBron is out of here. Well, first, he needs to take down what is the face of the league, and that is Mr. Luka Doncic. And Luka has been an absolute dog, and when you have a number 2 option like Kyrie Irving, that's kind of raps more often than not. And with the Dallas Mavericks, a heavy Money line underdog at plus 155. I think you would be foolish not to sprinkle some dollars on there. Also plus 4.5 at minus 110 on the spread. So if you guys want to be more conservative, the spread just means, again, Dallas needs to win outright or make sure that they don't lose by 4.5 points. If you guys would like to live bet this as well, as you know, Mark knows with live betting, highly implore you all to do so. You can have great success with that because you know teams fluctuate with leads by 10 to 15 points, if not 20 each game, and somehow there's all these crazy comebacks because basketball is crazy. And it comes down to those last crunch time of those final couple minutes, how many fouls you're getting, and of course what are the big shots that make the difference. But with the Dallas Mavericks having the best players still available in playoffs, yes, you heard that correctly, Luka Doncic is better than Jason Tatum. Luka Doncic is better than Anthony Edwards. He is the best player on the court still available in playoffs. So for that simple reason, we are hammering the Dallas Mavericks money line tomorrow. The spread looks nice, but the money line looks even better, folks. We're going to put 50 down to win 77.5. So again, I wish you all the best of luck with all your sports betting. And again, guys, I will come at you with my slate of MLB picks tomorrow at our pregame show, should we be doing pregame coverage. So be on the lookout for that. The same way I hope you guys are on the lookout for all your sports betting needs with our great friends at BetUS. Make sure to check them out today. And thank you guys all so much as always. But getting back into this one, Mark, Francisco Alvarez, this is why I still have a sliver of faith. Because the same way that the Mets have been free-falling with Alvarez being gone is the same way I really do think that they will get on a run to an extent with Alvarez being back. That man is not only a lightning rod for this team when right offensively, he is a personality that I just think is so infectious that while he's in the clubhouse right now trying to hype up the team, it's easier said than done when you're not actually out there playing. But when you're out there catching, when you're an elite frame array, the way Francisco Alvarez is, when you have elite pop time and throws a second and third the way that you do, better than Nito, better than Narvaez. Omar Narvaez better be DFA'd as soon as possible as Alvarez can be activated. That is, I don't give a shit that he got.
Get ready to learn Chinese, buddy.
Yeah, I don't care that he had, an opposite field walk-off hit against the Giants the other day. That was his first hit at Citi Field this season, folks. You think I give a rat's ass about that being his first hit? No, far from it. Get him out of here with that $8 million that Billy Epler, one of the, unfortunately, multiple moves that Billy had head-scratching as his tenure as Mets GM, which is why David's dealing with this mess to a degree right now. But Alvarez, the impact he makes, and furthermore, Mark, on top of it, he wasn't even hitting well when the Mets were on their 12-3 run. As soon as he goes down, the team forgets to hit. So regardless on the offense or lack thereof, just having him in the lineup is a big deal because pitchers know how much of a threat he is. There's a reason why Alvarez, even when the Mets lost those games in Colorado where he hit 2 home runs in a game, how many games? Francisco Alvarez, I'm pretty sure hit, I think he had himself at least 10 games last season where he hit a home run and the Mets lost. Like, it was brutal, like the type of stretch that he was on with the power. And I think he's going to untap that power again. I think the defense is going to be great for both the starters and the relievers. I think Francisco Alvarez will be along the lines of such a lightning rod that whether it's justified or not, whether it makes sense or not, he will be a difference maker, and he will help the Mets climb to get back to 500. Whether they get to 500 at any point this season, again, has yet to be decided. It wouldn't surprise me if they don't, but they're going to be pushing forward in that manner. Anything you would like to add regarding Francisco Alvarez?
Come back healthy, man. Can't wait to see him play. Super excited. He is Lisan Al-Gaib. So
yes.
when he comes back, anything he does, I will be praising. So I'm ready to see him. I'm tired of Omar Narvaez. I've had enough of him. Don't want to see him ever play again for the Mets.
No, I agree. And I love the Dune reference there. If you know, you know. We see Stark Raven Sports. I'm assuming that's our boy Mike in the chat. Just says pain. Yep, we agree, Mike. 100%. Make sure to subscribe to Stark Raven Sports if you guys haven't. Fantastic baseball and sports channel as a whole with various coverage. Very, very cool stuff that they do over there for your evergreen content, if you guys understand what that means. We see someone says, I'm used to July and August meltdowns, but this is beyond pathetic. It's plain sad. It is. It's sad not only for fans, it's also sad for us creators too, because like, holy shit, you need quite the incentive now to be going out your way. Like, I do this because I literally do this for a living, one, but two, like, every day just gets harder and harder, especially when you're repeating. It's different when, okay, so you have entertained baseball, but you lost some tight games. It's like, okay, the Mets had a lot of really good fight. They are just, a piece away from kind of getting where they want to be. Not the case here with this Mets team with the way that they've been underwhelming with their core group as consistently as they have been, unfortunately. Someone says Zach Short must have been the glue that was holding this team together. Damn it, said someone. Let's see. What do you guys think about buying pieces with control, even if the team is out of a playoff race? I'm talking guys like Jesus Luzardo, Jazz Chisholm, etc. Thoughts, Mark?
Like, yeah, but also at the same time, what do the Mets really have to offer that these guys are worth it? Like, I know we have a lot of prospects, that have been really good, especially on the pitching side. But I just got to imagine teams that are competing are going to offer more. And unless it's going to be like one of those Stroman deals where we look back on it and we're like, we gave up nothing for Marcus Stroman and we got a year and a half out of him. That was one of the better trades that we've made in a while. But a guy like Jesus Luzardo is going to be so highly sought after that the Mets are going to have to give up a lot to get him. A guy like Jazz Chisholm, you're giving up 2 top 100 prospects probably, and then a younger dude who's going to be a stud. And
I don't think Jazz would fit here. I really don't.
I don't think he would fit here either. I don't think it would be a good fit. He's a very good baseball player, but I mean, we had a guy give thumbs down and everybody freaked out. Jazz Chisholm probably is going to be of the same ilk of like, I'm not going to take the booing very lately.
Him in New York media, fucking forget it. No.
I love Jazz. I think he's great, but I don't think he fits in New York with how this fan base and how the media and how everybody is. I love the idea of trying to improve this team through the trade market this year by getting guys that are controllable. But at the same time, I don't know who it is, and I don't know what guys are going to be actually available outside of maybe those ones on the Marlins.
Right. No, I agree. Jesus Luzardo's a dog. I would love him, so we don't have to face him anymore. He's an exception I would love for the Mets to go after, and I think that's realistic to an extent, considering that David Stearns was involved in a plethora of trade talks for controllable pitching talent throughout the offseason. And really going all the way until the season began. That drum was being beat for a reason, but not, rightfully so. You don't want to give up an arm and a leg when you don't necessarily have to. So it's kind of weighing your current options with what's available out there. And we see Luis Angel Acuna as a topic of discussion in the chat. Some people are saying, why not call up Acuna and have McGill being our ultimate utility guy? Especially with Joey Wendell gone, why doesn't that make sense? And truthfully, I think that makes almost too much sense. That's part of the problem because on one hand, you say, okay, if you bring up Luis Angel Acuna and he's really bad offensively, you might hurt his development. But on the same side, his pure athleticism, his speed on the bags, his defensive range, there's a lot to be had there that I think the Mets could tap into. And I would argue that the Mets could use a lightning rod like Acuna with just his pure athleticism alone, regardless on what you get or lack thereof with the bat, to warrant the call-up. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not working with McGill right now. Truthfully, how much worse is he going to be than McGill? And if he is, send him back down. Like this, we've all become really obsessed with making sure that our prospects come up and are the best players in baseball instantly. Like Jackson Holiday struggled. The Rays sent down Junior Caminero this offseason. Jackson Chourio has been struggling. Doesn't mean that their careers are over. Doesn't mean that they won't be good players. Look at even like a guy like Jarren Duran for the Red Sox, who took a couple years to finally find his own. Right. And he's been phenomenal for them this year. And he didn't even have the prospect pedigree that some of these guys have. So for me, like we got spoiled, not us, but baseball fans got spoiled seeing Juan Soto and Ronald Acuna Jr. and Fernando Tatis. And these guys come up and just be MVP candidates right off the rip. But even Aaron Judge was terrible for like the first 70 games of his career. Now he's one of the best players in baseball. Mike Trout had a bad first time up. Like, prospect growth isn't linear, and I would rather find out what we have with Luis Angel Acuna now and take the chance rather than just keep trying the same broken record that's not working. I can't listen to it anymore. We got to try something else.
So, and speaking on the prospects here, this is a personal question I got for you, Mark, because this is something I pondered about a bit, and some fans have touched on in the past, and I've been thinking about it a bit more, looking at the numbers, and there is a level of concern. What's your thoughts on the Mets prospect core group of their offense and guys like Jet Williams, Drew Gilbert? I'm going to exclude Ryan Clifford because he doesn't fit my narrative right now. Luis Angel Acuna, Marco Vargas, and others, how the Mets' top offensive prospect talent right now is exciting, but they still fall in the category of struggling with the power and being more either singles hitters or, of course, at best, gap to gap. Underwhelming in size. And I'm no one to rag. I'm a short schmuck. But the fact that Jet Williams is literally my height when I interviewed him a year ago, and then he goes on to be the Mets' best prospect, clearly he's doing something right. But he still has struggled when it comes to, again, gaining power with his swing. The same way that we've seen issues with Luis Angel Acuna facing AAA pitching. The same way Kevin Parada looks like that he's going to be no longer a Mets prospect before we know it, the way that he's been underwhelming in his professional career. What's your thoughts about the Mets offensive prospects, and how much do you think the Mets should really hold on to them versus maybe considering them in a deal for more younger, controllable, MLB-ready talent?
Yeah, I Jet's the guy that I don't want to get rid of. Jet and Drew, I think, are guys that you got to keep around, especially because how young Jet is. Right. I mean, it's a bad comp, but it's the comp I'll give. If he just builds out like Jose Altuve, like that's kind of the dream. that would be like, oh my God, we got Jose Altuve. That'd be sick. He's super athletic, has good exit velos that he's shown, good bat to ball skills, great plate discipline. Drew Gilbert's a dog. We know that. But yeah, some of these other guys, I mean, someone wants Kevin Parada, move him. Like, let him be their problem. There's definitely guys that they can move. And in terms of the lack of power, word on the street maybe that the Mets hitting development doesn't really seem to understand how hitting development works, maybe necessarily. And the idea that I've heard is that the Mets hitting development seems to prioritize the ability to make contact and have plate discipline and hope that they can build on that power and teaching you power later. Hence a guy like Brett Baty. They're not really focused on him. They want him to be able to just get comfortable at the plate, put the bat on the ball, and hopefully the power will come. I think that's completely backwards of how things should be done. Like, process-wise, yes, you want guys to make contact. You want them to have good plate discipline. But if you're not hitting the ball with any oomph, it's hard to be a Major League Baseball player of any sort of caliber. And as much as I love Brett Baty, that's been the huge difference between him and Vientos, even in this small sample.
Right.
Vientos is hitting the ball for significantly more power, while Brett is still struggling to make that good, consistent contact. Doesn't, again, mean that I think that either of them are dead or either of them are better than the other. But it's a numbers game. You got to hit the ball harder. The harder you hit the ball, the more likely you are to be successful. That's the most important thing to me. I don't know exactly what the Mets hitting development is doing. I think part of the problem is Eric Chavez and Jeremy Barnes too. Because if they can't get the guys at the major league level right, I sure as hell don't trust them to get the guys in the minor league level right. But they got the pitching right, so we're halfway there, I guess.
Yeah, we are halfway there. And I think this comes back to David Stearns a bit, right? Because when you talk about the hitting approach, not only, organizationally with the guys at the MLB level, but internally, minor league wise, these again are a lot of hires that David Stearns didn't make. These are a lot of guys that were here either from Billy Epler or even to an extent with guys like Zach Scott. I can't speak on how much of those were those guys' decisions, but I know that's a good bulk of a lot of those guys in the minor leagues. And that's a concern for me right there. It doesn't take a rock scientist to figure out that if your current present baseball operations, one that you actually have faith in to a degree like no other, you want his hands on literally as much as possible. And it's understandable why he only had his hands on so much in his first offseason, because you can only do so much. But especially after a year like this, I think we're going to just see a lot more turmoil. And I think as we get to the deadline, not necessarily just the deadline, but more so the offseason, regardless of how much, 1 year assets the Mets trade by the deadline or keep, the offseason, there's so much money coming off the books. The big names out there in the free agent market who the Mets have their eyes on, and really kind of doing another retool. But this will be David Stearns' first attempt on doing things the way he wants to do them.
Yes.
Last offseason, he knew he was strapped with the dollars, and that was a real thing. For people thinking, okay, the Mets can go out and spend, they can, but when you have, Schmuck and Rob Manfred going out of their way to basically say, okay, we're going to tax you, even though another big market team spends more money, and ensuing off season a year and a half later in the Dodgers, that doesn't matter, of course. It's just frustrating how I think if Steve Cohen was able to make the hire he wanted right away, which for those that don't know, was David Stearns. We have videos on the channel going back to 3 years ago talking about David Stearns. If that happened the way the Mets wanted to happen, this would be a completely different looking team. And I'm confident saying it's probably a team right now that is beyond ready for playoffs, if not championship pedigree, because they've had multiple years under Stearns to have things the way he wants to implement them. So in the time being, it is exactly like they said heading into the season. This is a pushing for playoffs year, but a transitionary year. Giving kids a leash when we want to give them leashes, seeing what we have with our internal options, our short-term options. And again, if the Mets do become full-blown sellers by the deadline and say they aren't afraid to burn bridges with some guys, Luis Severino, Sean Manaea. I mean, they have
a lot for Severino.
A lot. They have so, and Sevy's a guy I want back too right now with
of
the
course,
way he's pitching. Rightfully so. I wouldn't even be surprised if he went back to the Yanks, truthfully, because
they give us the right deal. Why not?
Exactly. We'll see what happens. But all I know is the Mets under David Stearns, they're going to get to where they want to be. But unfortunately, the harsh reality that we're just quickly finding out is it just isn't going to be nearly as fast as we'd hope. And what we're going to have to go through as fans, unfortunately, is going to be a lot. And this season is proving that with the current pace of not even 70 wins right now. Yeah. So hopefully they can start to turn things around. Hopefully next time I have you on, Mark, we can talk about how the Mets are closer to 500 and they're climbing their way up the tower. But in the meantime, it's not only doom and gloom, but fans are already done watching the team until they give us a reason to watch them. And if you're not doing what we're doing, I don't blame you at all whatsoever. So,
No.
Mark, please let everyone know where they can find you and your final remarks before we wrap things up.
Sure. If you want to hear my non-Mets takes, Draft Neck Mark on everything social media, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, you can find me there. And if you want to hear my Mets takes, Mets Up Podcast, we will be dropping an episode. Well, we'll have a video out tomorrow. We have an episode out after every single series. So if you guys like that kind of content, METSDUP, and that's the podcast I do with my boy James Shiano, and we're due to have Wardy on. We're gonna plan something out soon and get him on the podcast for his inaugural appearance.
There we go. That's gonna be exciting. Can't wait. Appreciate you guys. James is the next man up. I'm gonna hit up James. Let's get him on this week.
On.
Truthfully, the only reason why I haven't hit up James sooner is because how doom and gloom everything's been, and I want him on because I know that he's a pitching guru in his own right. I know that there's certain numbers that he wants to throw out there. I know that he wants to rave about certain prospects and things, and unfortunately, you can make the argument that, okay, now's the perfect time because nothing's going right. But the counter is everyone is so pissed off right now that they also don't want to hear it. So I think both those things can be true, right? So we'll get them on. But Mark, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time. Long show today, but this was a vent session. Again, we had to let a lot out. Thank you all so much for watching or listening. Again, make sure to hit that like and subscribe on your way out, folks. We'll be back live tomorrow. Again, #1 post-game show here on YouTube. All thanks to you, amazing.